What happens when the whole world watches you grow up, but never lets you grow? Chloë Grace Moretz wasn't just famous. She was iconic before she turned 15. She killed villains in Kick-Ass, broke hearts in If I Stay, and ruled red carpets while other kids were still learning algebra. But behind the fame was a teenager who never got to be a child. Her life was a curated timeline of premieres, interviews, headlines, and roles that demanded her to look older, act tougher, speak smarter than anyone her age should. She didn't just grow up in public. She was shaped by it. But as the years passed, something changed. She stopped chasing blockbusters. She skipped press tours. She pulled back from the spotlight. Why did she suddenly disappear from Hollywood's A-list? Why did someone with so much talent, power, and presence choose distance over domination? And what does it mean when someone who had it all, fame, beauty, influence, chooses silence? Because here's the truth they never printed. The same system that made Chloë a star also made her a target. Of memes, of obsession, of internet cruelty. And when the world finally broke her image, it almost broke her, too. This isn't a story about fame. It's a story about what fame takes when no one's watching. Chloë Grace Moretz was born in Atlanta, Georgia, in 1997, but by the time she was 12, her name was already echoing through Hollywood. While most kids her age were still in middle school, she was firing pistols and dropping F-bombs as Hit Girl in Kick-Ass. A performance so bold, so confident, it stunned audiences and critics alike. She wasn't just good for her age. She was better than most adults in the industry. By her early teens, she had starred in major studio films, walked couture runways, and become a household name. Her face was on every screen, her voice in every interview, and her image everywhere from magazine covers to fan edits. But what people rarely saw was the price of that acceleration. Her life wasn't built on childhood, it was built on rehearsals, photo shoots, and red carpets. While other teenagers had awkward phases in private, Chloë had hers documented in HD. Her body, her hair, her smile. Everything was commented on, dissected, compared. And when she wasn't perfect, the internet didn't just notice, it mocked. At 18, she was already a veteran. At 20, she had done more than most actors twice her age. But along the way, something shifted. She began to step back, turning down roles, avoiding press, and keeping her private life increasingly guarded. It wasn't burnout. It wasn't failure. It was self-preservation. Because when you've been consumed by the world since you were a child, sometimes the only way to survive is to disappear. For a while, Chloë Grace Moretz was everywhere. She was the girl who could headline horror films, lead teen dramas, voice animated hits, and still turn heads at Fashion Week. Hollywood couldn't get enough of her, and neither could the public. But while her career looked unstoppable on the outside, inside, something much quieter and much darker was taking root. She was praised for being mature, fearless, composed beyond her years. But that came at a cost. The pressure to be perfect wasn't an expectation. It was a requirement. And no one told her how cruel that standard could become. The turning point wasn't a movie. It was a meme. In 2016, an edited paparazzi photo of Chloë walking with a pizza box went viral, distorted to mock her body proportions, then shared across the internet with millions of likes and comments. At first, it seemed like another tasteless internet joke. But for Chloë, it was devastating. She later revealed that the meme triggered body dysmorphia, anxiety, and a sense of invisibility. She felt dehumanized, reduced to a joke, a target. She didn't want to leave the house. She didn't want to be photographed. She didn't want to be seen. Not by cameras, not by fans, not even by herself. All while the world kept asking, where did Chloë go? But they already had the answer, they just didn't want to look at it. Because in a world obsessed with watching women rise, fall,
we hope you will enjoy the following
constant scrutiny, Chloë did something radical. She walked away before it could break her completely. The truth was never about one meme or one moment. It was about the quiet accumulation of 1,000 cuts. Chloë Grace Moretz didn't disappear because she couldn't handle fame. She disappeared because she finally realized that fame was never built to handle someone like her. From the time she was a child, she was praised for her maturity, for how adult she seemed on screen. But off-screen, she was still growing, still learning how to exist in a world that had already made up its mind about who she was supposed to be. The industry didn't protect her, commodified her. She was cast to be fierce, flawless, desirable, but never vulnerable, never messy, never human. When she opened up about the meme and the impact it had on her body image, most people were shocked. But what was shocking wasn't her honesty. It was how long she'd had to carry it in silence. She once said, "I basically became a recluse. It took away something I used to enjoy, which was getting dressed up and going out." This wasn't just about vanity. It was about fear, about trauma, about the shame that comes when the entire world laughs at a version of you that you never chose to create. The dark truth is that Chloë Grace Moretz didn't fade because she lost relevance. She faded because she finally chose peace over performance. And in an industry where silence is often mistaken for failure, that choice was the most powerful thing she's ever done. She didn't walk away because she was broken. She walked away to avoid becoming that way. At Hidden Fame, we don't see Chloë Grace Moretz as a forgotten star. We see her as someone who chose to rewrite the narrative. In a culture that demands visibility, that punishes privacy, and that profits from every personal flaw, her silence wasn't weakness, it was resistance. She grew up in an industry that applauds overexposure and disguises exploitation as empowerment. From child star to meme target, Chloe's story isn't unique, but her response was. She didn't spiral. She didn't perform her pain. She didn't play along. Instead, she stepped back. She chose boundaries. She sought healing. And maybe that's what unsettles people the most. Because in a world addicted to watching women rise, fall, and rise again, Chloë Grace Moretz broke the loop. She didn't crash. She didn't cling to the spotlight. She walked away before it swallowed her. We often talk about strength in terms of survival, but Chloe's strength was in her refusal to become a spectacle. She gave us brilliance, and then chose to protect what was left of herself. And maybe that's the kind of story we should be telling more often. There was a time when Chloë Grace Moretz lit up every screen she touched. Her voice was sharper than her years, her presence stronger than most adults twice her age. She was Hit Girl, Carrie, and dozens of other unforgettable characters, and she carried them all with a kind of grace that made you forget just how young she really was. Back then, she seemed fearless, untouchable, but maybe the real bravery wasn't in the roles she played, it was in the silence she chose later. Because disappearing from Hollywood isn't easy. It's not a retreat. It's a risk. When your whole life has been built around being seen, choosing to vanish takes more courage than staying in the spotlight ever did. And yet, she didn't vanish completely. She still acts, still chooses projects. But now on her terms, in her time, she's no longer a child being directed. She's a woman reclaiming her story. And maybe, just maybe, that story isn't over. It's just no longer being told by anyone but her. Some stories were never meant to be known. But now,